Imagine dedicating 12 years of your life to someone, building a home, sharing dreams, and creating what you believed was an unshakable bond. Now picture all of that crumbling in a single moment. A moment when you realize the person you trusted most has betrayed you. Ethan always considered himself a lucky man. A hardworking architect with a passion for design, he had built not just houses but a life he was proud of. His wife, Clara, was the centerpiece of that life. Together, they had crafted what seemed to be a perfect marriage. Their cozy suburban home was filled with laughter, shared routines, and years of memories. From weekend getaways to quiet mornings sipping coffee in the sunlight-drenched kitchen, they appeared to be the picture of marital bliss. But as the years passed, subtle cracks began to form in their seemingly unshakable bond. Clara, once vibrant and full of affection, had grown distant. She'd taken on longer hours at work and joined new social circles that rarely included Ethan. What he interpreted as Clara finding new hobbies and friends was actually a growing sense of dissatisfaction, an itch she couldn't quite scratch. Ethan, oblivious to the brewing storm, remained focused on his career and his plans for their future. He had no idea that Clara's heart had begun to drift. To him, their life was stable and fulfilling. He saw their routine, shared meals, movie nights, and occasional arguments as the natural rhythm of any long-term relationship. Clara, however, felt differently. The spark she once felt had dimmed, replaced by a gnawing restlessness. She yearned for something: freedom, passion, or maybe just the feeling of being desired again. It was a hunger she hadn't shared with Ethan, perhaps because she didn't fully understand it herself. Over time, her mind began to wander, and her gaze followed. It was during a company project that she met Eric, a charming and confident colleague who seemed to offer everything she felt was missing. Unaware of Clara's emotional distance, Ethan continued with life as usual, blind to the tension simmering just beneath the surface. The distance between them was growing, yet he couldn't see it. Clara, meanwhile, had already started rationalizing her next move, a decision that would forever change both their lives. The stage was set. Ethan believed he had a partner for life, while Clara was preparing to chase something she believed was missing. Little did she know, her search for freedom would unravel not just her marriage but her entire world. It started as an ordinary evening in the Hayes household. Ethan returned home from work, exhausted but content, to find Clara already dressed and sitting at the kitchen counter. She looked striking in a sleek black dress and heels, a sight that momentarily filled him with pride. It wasn't often she dressed up like this anymore. "Wow," Ethan said with a warm smile. "What's the occasion?" Clara didn't respond right away. She took a sip of her wine, her expression cool, almost detached. Ethan felt the first prickle of unease. "I'm going out," she said finally, setting the glass down. "Out where?" Ethan asked, still smiling, though a nervous chuckle escaped his lips. Clara's gaze was steady, unflinching. "On a date." For a moment, Ethan didn't understand. He blinked, certain he had misheard. "A date? With who?" "His name is Eric," Clara said, her tone casual, as though she were discussing a routine dinner reservation. "He's a colleague from work." The room fell silent. Ethan felt like the air had been punched out of his lungs. His grip tightened on the chair he had been about to pull out. "You're joking," he said, though he already knew she wasn't. Clara met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "I need this, Ethan. I need to feel alive again." The words struck like a slap across his face. Alive? What had their 12 years together been, if not life? The house they had built together, the nights spent laughing over takeout, the vacations and shared dreams. Was none of that real? "Do you hear yourself?" Ethan's voice trembled with a mixture of disbelief and anger. "You're married, Clara. You made vows to me, to us. Does that mean nothing to you?" Clara's face hardened, her defensive walls rising. "I've given you everything for 12 years, Ethan. I've put myself last over and over again. I'm tired. I want something for me now." Ethan couldn't believe what he was hearing. "And the way to do that is to betray me? To humiliate me?" "I'm not asking for permission, Ethan," Clara said coldly. "I'm telling you, this is what I need." For a moment, Ethan stood frozen, unable to process the enormity of what Clara was saying. Finally, he stepped back, his jaw tightening. "Fine," he said, his voice eerily calm. "Do what you want, Clara. But understand this, actions have consequences." Clara hesitated, her expression faltering. She hadn't expected this reaction. Ethan wasn't pleading or arguing, he was resolved. But before she could reply, he turned and walked away, leaving her standing alone in the kitchen. That night, Ethan lay awake, staring at the ceiling as his mind raced. The woman he had trusted with his life had shattered their bond without a second thought. But if Clara thought she could walk away unscathed, she was wrong. Betrayal wasn't something Ethan could forgive. He wouldn't beg her to stay. Instead, he would show her exactly what the cost of her choices would be. The next morning, Ethan woke up with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. The betrayal had cut deep, but it had also ignited something within him, a resolve to take back control. If Clara wanted to throw away everything they had built, then Ethan would make sure she felt the weight of every decision she had made. His transformation began that day. The man who had been content to drift along, focused on work and complacent in his routines, was gone. Ethan started with his appearance. He booked a haircut at a trendy barber shop, trading his overgrown, disheveled look for a sharp, modern style. He invested in a tailored wardrobe, discarding his rumpled shirts and scuffed shoes for sleek blazers and polished leather loafers. When he caught his reflection in the mirror, he barely recognized the man staring back. But the transformation wasn't just skin deep. Ethan's mindset shifted. He was no longer the naive husband hoping for reconciliation. Instead, he became calculated and precise, his every move guided by a single purpose, ensuring Clara understood the magnitude of her betrayal. The first step in his plan was gathering evidence. Ethan pored over bank statements, phone records, and any trace of Clara's activities he could find. Late-night calls to Eric, unexplained expenditures, and subtle patterns began to emerge. The betrayal wasn't just emotional, it was financial, too. Every discovery fueled his determination. Next, Ethan reached out to Lucas, a trusted friend and one of the sharpest lawyers he knew. Lucas greeted him with a firm handshake, his brow furrowing as Ethan laid out the situation. 12 years. And this is how she treats you? Lucas said, shaking his head. We're not just filing for divorce. We're making sure she feels the fallout. Together, they crafted a strategy. Lucas would handle the legal side, freezing joint accounts, filing for divorce with evidence of infidelity, and safeguarding Ethan's assets. Meanwhile, Ethan enlisted Ava, a close confidant who had always been perceptive about Clara's behavior. Ava had seen the cracks in the marriage long before Ethan had and was eager to help. Are you sure about this? Ava asked as they sat in her apartment, poring over timelines and emails. Ethan's jaw tightened. She made her choice. Now, I'm making mine. With Ava's help, Ethan finalized his plans. A private investigator was hired to follow Clara and Eric, collecting undeniable proof of their relationship. Photos of stolen kisses, receipts from fancy dinners, and timelines of her work nights painted a damning picture. Ethan felt a mixture of pain and satisfaction with every new piece of evidence, knowing it would all be worth it in the end. While Ethan was meticulously crafting his revenge, Clara was blissfully unaware. Her first date with Eric had gone better than she'd imagined. They shared drinks, laughter, and flirtations that made her feel young and alive again. Eric was everything she thought Ethan no longer was. Charming, attentive, and adventurous. For the first time in years, Clara felt like she was rediscovering herself. But the fantasy was short-lived. As she continued her clandestine meetings with Eric, she didn't notice the subtle changes in Ethan. He no longer asked her where she was going or when she'd be back. He had stopped trying to argue or plead. Instead, he had become cold, indifferent even. Clara mistook this for resignation, believing Ethan was quietly accepting their marriage's demise. What she didn't realize was that Ethan was 2 steps ahead of her. He knew where she went, what she did, and even what she wore on her dates. He had turned her betrayal into ammunition, and each new revelation was another nail in the coffin of their marriage. One evening, As Clara returned from a night out with Eric, she found Ethan sitting in the living room, calmly sipping a glass of whiskey. His tailored suit and confident demeanor made her pause. She had expected him to be sulking in their bedroom, not sitting there with an air of calm authority. "You're still awake?" she asked cautiously. "How was your date?" Ethan replied, his tone devoid of emotion. Clara faltered, unsure of how to respond. "It was fine." Ethan set his glass down with a deliberate clink. "Good. Enjoy it while you can." Her brows furrowed in confusion. "What's that supposed to mean?" Ethan stood, his movements slow and deliberate. "It means you've made your choices, Clara. And now I'm making mine." Before she could respond, Ethan walked past her and out the door, leaving her standing in the dimly lit room, suddenly aware that the power dynamic had shifted. Ethan's transformation was complete. He wasn't just a man seeking revenge. He was a man reclaiming his life. And Clara, oblivious to the storm brewing around her, had no idea just how much she stood to lose. Clara's world began to crumble in ways she never anticipated. It started with a message from her boss early one morning. "Please come to the office immediately. We need to discuss your position." Her stomach churned as she rushed to work, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. When she arrived, her heart sank at the sight of Ethan sitting calmly in the lobby, flanked by a manila folder and a private investigator with a steely gaze. "What is this?" Clara demanded, her voice wavering. Ethan didn't bother looking up from his phone. The investigator handed her the folder, its contents a devastating dossier of her recent escapades. There were photos of her and Eric in intimate moments, detailed reports of her movements, and proof of her lies. Every late-night call, every fraudulent work meeting. "You had me followed?" Clara whispered, her voice barely audible. Ethan finally met her eyes, his tone ice-cold. "You left me no choice, Clara. Actions have consequences." Her boss, standing nearby, cleared his throat. "Clara, this is a violation of company policy. We cannot tolerate this level of misconduct. Effective immediately, you're terminated." The words hit her like a sledgehammer. Jobless, humiliated, and with no chance to explain herself, Clara watched Ethan leave the building without a backward glance. That was only the beginning of her downfall. When she returned home later that evening, she discovered the locks had been changed. She banged on the door, shouting Ethan's name, but no one answered. A neighbor eventually handed her an envelope with a key and a note inside. "Your belongings are in storage. This house is no longer yours." The realization of her situation began to sink in. Ethan wasn't just angry, he was methodically dismantling her life. Clara's bank accounts were frozen, her joint credit cards canceled. Friends she once leaned on for support began to distance themselves, wary of the growing rumors surrounding her. The whispers in her social circle grew louder. She cheated. She destroyed her marriage. She got exactly what she deserved. Even Eric, the man Clara had risked everything for, began to pull away. Ethan's investigator had paid him a visit, revealing the extent of the damage their affair had caused. Eric, whose charisma had once been so appealing, suddenly became a shadow of himself. His colleagues grew cold, promotions slipped through his fingers, and his girlfriend, unaware of his double life, packed her bags and left him. Within weeks, Eric moved out of town, leaving Clara to face the consequences alone. Clara's humiliation only deepened. With no savings, she was forced to take a part-time job at a diner, the only place willing to hire her after Ethan's legal team revealed her financial mismanagement and infidelity during the divorce proceedings. Every day at work, she endured the whispers and judgmental stares of customers who recognized her as that woman, the one who threw her life away for a fleeting affair. The shame was suffocating, but she had no choice but to endure it. Meanwhile, Ethan's life was thriving. His confidence and determination extended beyond his revenge, earning him respect at work and admiration from those around him. The new, composed version of Ethan was magnetic, and even Ava, his trusted confidant, couldn't help but notice. Together, they celebrated the closure Ethan had achieved, their friendship deepening into something more as time passed. Clara, however, was trapped in a spiral of regret. She spent her nights scrolling through old photos of her and Ethan, the weight of her choices pressing harder with every memory. The life she had taken for granted was gone, replaced by a harsh reality she had never imagined. Ethan had ensured her downfall was not just personal but comprehensive. From her career to her social life, he had made certain that every piece of her betrayal was accounted for and every comfort she had enjoyed was stripped away. Clara had gambled with her marriage, and she had lost, spectacularly. As the weeks turned into months, Clara began to realize the full extent of what she had done. But by then, the damage was irreversible. Ethan had moved on, stronger than ever, while she was left to pick up the shattered pieces of her life, knowing that every misstep was a consequence of her own choices. In the months following the divorce, Ethan discovered a version of himself he had long forgotten. The betrayal that had once consumed him became a catalyst for growth and transformation. Free from the toxicity of his marriage, Ethan began to reclaim his life, one deliberate step at a time. At work, his newfound confidence translated into success. The same precision and determination he had channeled into his revenge now fueled his career. He took on ambitious projects, earning the respect of his colleagues and securing a long-overdue promotion. The man who had once been overlooked now stood out as a leader and innovator. His triumphs weren't just professional. They were deeply personal, a testament to his resilience. Outside of work, Ethan began to explore new interests. He joined a local running club, traveled to places he had always dreamed of visiting, and spent more time with friends who uplifted and inspired him. Each new experience reminded him of his worth, rebuilding his self-esteem brick by brick. Amid this transformation, Ethan's connection with Ava deepened. What had started as a supportive friendship began to evolve into something more. Ava admired the strength and clarity Ethan had shown in the wake of his divorce, and Ethan found comfort in Ava's steady presence and genuine care. Their relationship grew naturally, built on trust, respect, and open communication, qualities Ethan had come to value more than ever. With Ava, there were no secrets or half-truths, no games or manipulations. For the first time in years, Ethan felt truly seen and appreciated. One evening, as they sat together by the fire in his newly renovated home, Ava rested her head on Ethan's shoulder. "You've come so far," she said softly. "You deserve all of this." Ethan smiled, pressing a kiss to her hair. "And you're the best thing that's ever happened to me." For the first time in a long time, Ethan felt at peace. His scars, though still present, no longer defined him. Instead, they served as reminders of his strength and a life lesson he would never forget. He was worthy of love and respect, and he would never settle for less again. The days stretched into months, and Clara found herself struggling to rebuild her life from the ground up. The once confident woman now lived in a modest apartment in a city far from the life she had known. She worked tirelessly at a small boutique, a far cry from her previous job, just to make ends meet. The whispers and judgmental stares were gone, but so were the comforts of her old life. Late at night, Clara often scrolled through old photos of her and Ethan. Vacation selfies, anniversary dinners, moments filled with love and laughter. The weight of her regret was suffocating. She saw herself clearly now. Selfish, reckless, and blind to what she had until it was gone. She tried reaching out to former friends, but most had distanced themselves, unwilling to be part of her mess. Even Eric, the man she had risked everything for, was just a bitter memory. One crisp winter afternoon, Clara was caught off guard when she ran into Ethan at a grocery store parking lot. He looked different, happier, more confident, and with a warm energy she barely recognized. Clara hesitated before approaching him. "Ethan," she said softly, her voice trembling. He turned, his eyes narrowing slightly before softening into a look of indifference. "Clara," he replied, his tone polite but distant. Clara's voice broke. "I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I was selfish, blind, and I see that now. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I hope someday you can find it in your heart." Ethan studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "I've forgiven you, Clara," he said finally. "But forgiveness doesn't mean going back. It means moving forward." She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I understand. I wish you happiness, and I wish you peace," Ethan replied before walking away, leaving Clara to watch him go, knowing he had found the closure she would always seek. Life is a series of choices, and every choice has consequences. Clara's story is a stark reminder that betrayal often leads to irreversible loss, while Ethan's journey shows us the power of resilience and personal growth. In the face of heartbreak, he didn't just survive. He thrived, proving that even the deepest wounds can lead to strength and transformation. As for Clara, her story highlights the importance of valuing what you have before it's too late. Mistakes may teach us hard lessons, but they come with a price. Redemption is possible, but it requires self-awareness and change. What would you have done in Ethan's shoes? Do you think Clara deserved forgiveness? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspectives. And don't forget to subscribe to Unheard Stories for more gripping tales like this one. Life is messy, but every story has something to teach us. Until next time, remember, our actions define us, and it's never too late to rewrite your story.